Okay, guys, so we are at the next step in the process, writing the offer to submit to the seller. This is where shit gets real. This is where we are submitting an official offer to the seller and the listing agent to present our terms for purchasing their house. So, in Pennsylvania, there is a standard agreement of sale of real estate that we put all of your offer terms on. This document is a 14-page document, and it's going to outline our purchase price, how much deposit we're putting down, settlement date, mortgage contingency, any of the home inspections we're going to elect, and also title and other specifics depending on the house that pertain to the purchase of this house. So starting off, when we're determining purchase price, we will sit down, we will look at comparable houses in the neighborhood that have sold to determine whether this house is priced appropriately, overpriced, or potentially even underpriced, to determine exactly the offer that you should make to the seller on this agreement of sale. The next thing we need to determine is deposit. So if we are in a highly competitive bidding war situation, you want to put as much money down to show that you are a strong buyer, serious about buying the house. In general, you're looking to put between 2 and 5% down of the purchase price that either the listing agent or the title company that we hire to do title for you will hold in escrow, and that will be part of your down payment that you're putting down on the mortgage. The point of doing that is to show that you're making consideration for the property and it is necessary. Now, we will talk about that. You can always put more down, but in general, you don't want to put too little down, or the seller will think that it's not a serious offer. So you want to budget for somewhere between 2 and 5%. Once again, using the example, if we're buying a $300,000 house, the least amount down that you would want to put down is $6,000. And, in general, the higher number will be about $15,000. So keep that in mind when we submit the offer, that you'll need that liquid and need to submit that within a few days of the offer being accepted. The next important thing is the settlement date. Settlement date is negotiable. As the buyer, we'll pick a settlement date that we're looking to settle on. But that is something that the seller also has to agree to. And in general, I will reach out to the listing agent on your behalf to find out when would the seller like to settle. In a standard transaction, it takes somewhere between 30 and 45 days from when we're in agreement with the seller and have an executed contract to getting to the settlement table. So about a month or a little longer than a month, depending on timing and what everybody needs. So keep that in mind as well. Another aspect of the contract that we submit to the seller is that we put a timestamp on there. The seller needs to respond to us within a certain amount of time, usually within 24 hours of us submitting the contract to the listing agent. So we put that timestamp on there, and if the time expires, that contract that we submitted to the seller becomes void, and you are no longer bound to that contract if the seller were to accept it after that time frame. Now, quick caveat to that, we can still negotiate an offer, but we would have to revise the agreement that we submitted to the listing agent if that time has expired. So you are not bound indefinitely to the offer that you submit. We decide exactly how much time before that offer expires to put a little pressure onto the seller to actually respond to us. The next important part is what's included in the sale. In general, this is not an absolute, but in general, the washer, dryer, and refrigerator need to be included in the sale. Otherwise, they don't necessarily convey. Things that do convey with the sale are the oven and usually the microwave, because they are a fixture of the property. They are bolted in, screwed in, or tied into the property, where a refrigerator, a washer and dryer are just plugged in. So there is a difference there. It's very important that you include them in the agreement of sale, or they might not be there when you go to buy the house. So that's one key thing that we'll always talk about, but just keep that in the back of the mind, that you should not need to buy those appliances, but we need to include them when we're submitting an offer. The next important part of the agreement of sale is the mortgage contingency. So if you are obtaining financing, we need to include all of your mortgage terms on there. If it's a 30-year mortgage, what your interest rate is, how much money you're putting down, who your lender will be, what your interest rate will be. And all of those terms lock in when we agree with the seller. And if something were to change in that mortgage contingency, where you're not able to buy the house anymore, whether the house underappraises or the mortgage interest rate jumps and you no longer qualify for the house, or God forbid you lose your job or your job status changes, that mortgage contingency will protect you as the consumer, that you can terminate the contract and get that deposit money back that we talked about a few minutes ago. So very important that is filled out correctly. and that is protecting you if you're getting financing. Now, if you're not getting financing and you're buying the house with cash, we waive that contingency. It is not an important contingency because we're not getting financing. The next important part of the agreement of sale is the inspection. So there is a contingency area in the agreement of sale where we either elect or waive inspections. The main inspection in the state of Pennsylvania is a home inspection. There's also wood infestation, which is mostly termite, but there are other bugs that can eat wood, so you want to get a termite inspection or a wood infestation inspection. And the third most important one is radon. So radon is very prevalent around Pennsylvania. Radon is a natural radioactive isotope that is, pretty much found in the basement level of houses. And if it's over a certain level, which is 4.0 picoliters, then you should get a radon remediation system to protect yourself from the radon. Other inspections that we can elect are property insurance to make sure the property is insurable. If there is septic, we would inspect a septic tank. If there is a well on the property, we would inspect the well. There's also deeds, restrictions, and zoning. So if we're concerned about anything with the deed, we can elect that. That's very, very random, but there are properties that we might want to consider doing that for. And then there's lead-based paint if you want to inspect the house for lead-based paint. There are very old houses in the city of Philadelphia that could have lead-based paint. Same thing with the suburbs, depending on where you're looking. So if that's something you're concerned about, we would elect all of those as contingencies. And if you're not concerned about those things, we can waive them. One thing to note with inspections, in the competitive market that we've been in the last several years, a lot of times you will need to waive those inspections to win the offer if we're in a bidding war. So when you're working with me as your agent or anyone on our team, we're going to try and advise you as best we can on whether you can waive the inspections on this property or not. And what it really comes down to is, number one, if you're in a competitive situation, you might to. If you're not, you shouldn't have to. And if you are in a competitive situation, has this house been maintained by the seller? Are all the systems updated? Is the roof newer? Are they disclosing this on the seller's disclosure that we get to review? So we will have that conversation with you if that seems like something that you will need to do to win this house, if you guys feel comfortable with doing that. Now, you never have to do that, but there are a lot of scenarios, and we've seen that over the years, where if you're in a bidding war situation, to make the offer more enticing to the seller and to be competitive against another offer that may be waiving the inspections, it's something that you might consider doing. So that's a conversation we'll have during the process, and we can talk more about that another time. Finally, when we submit this contract, we will negotiate all of these terms back and forth with the seller, and when we come to an agreement and the seller signs off on it and you signed off on it, we have a fully executed agreement of sale, and then you are under contract and on your way to buying a home. Next, we'll talk about inspections and some more processes that go on with the transaction. Now that we're under contract, make sure you watch the final part of this series, Getting to the Settlement Table. That's right after this video.